Hello guys, what is going on? I'm not really a theorist or anything like that, so I just want to let you know this is going to be really janky, and it's not really going to be that well put together, and also I'm not super theory brained, so this isn't really going to be like, I'm not going to be referencing a bunch of stuff. I'm not going to be referencing the Spampton sweepstakes or the ARGs a whole lot. I don't know about like Gaster green theory or any of that stuff. This is all just kind of like, I only vaguely know about that stuff. The only reason I want to present this theory in general is just because I think chapter 5 specifically revealed a lot of interesting information about what I think is something of a triple Trucies thing going on here, and that's what my theory is called, as you can see. And as you can clearly see in big red text, major spoilers for chapter 5. Okay, so if you don't want any spoilers on that stuff, if you don't want any spoilers on the weird route, or anything like that, do not continue past this point. You have been warned. Okay, but anyway, I coined the theory. I coined the term, or the title, I guess, triple Trucies theory, because specifically I think the whole scene in chapter 2 with between Queen, Birdley, and Noelle, I think all of that was sort of alluding to almost what's going on with what people in the fandom are calling the group chat and stuff like that, right? I think there is a whole web of lies, and there are conspiracies on top of conspiracies within everything that's going on that's leading up to the end of the story of Deltarune, right? From a narrative perspective, I think this is what is going on. So, first things first, I have grabbed some of the dialogue, right, just to show you where I got this from, right? Yeah, this is Birdley talking to Noelle and Chris when Birdley runs into them before the fight in chapter 2. He says, "Noelle, what are you doing? We have a truce with Chris." Haha, that's impossible. That would be double Trucies. And then, who said you could double Trucies? Who the beep said you could double Trucies? This is Queen when she is hiding from Birdley. In that one scene in the alleyway when Queen is hiding next to Noelle. So I just think that whole scene, even though it was played for a joke, I think it's kind of alluding to what is going on, because again, the whole thing is that Chris, if you think about it, Chris is central to the conspiracy that is going on currently with the Knight and all of this stuff happening right now. Chris is central to that, and obviously Chris is working with a lot of different people, but I think within those different people he is working with, that he's doing something of a double Trucies or a triple Trucies even. And I think even though that whole scene was played off for a joke, it was giving us very plain foreshadowing on sort of what's going on. Okay? Now, first off, the first culprit of all of this stuff, obviously, we've gotten a lot of new information with Asgore in this chapter, but if we look back to chapter 4, when Asgore's in the bathroom, we see him talking to himself, saying, "Now more than ever I need to concentrate," and all of that stuff. And then we get the scene of Asgore in Carol's room, and we can see in Carol's room right here that Carol has her sword, and Carol has her own corkboard right here that has a lot of stuff going on, a lot of dots being connected. And what we got from this scene originally is that Asgore is somewhat working with Carol, right? And we also get context of this between when we're in the church in chapter 4. We also get context from that between Toriel and Rudy when they're talking. When Toriel is talking about Carol, she says, "Your wife's financial support to him, I just wish she did not support his you-know-what." And then Rudy, we're assuming he's playing dumb here, he says, "His you-know-what?" And then Toriel obviously is pretty pissed off that Rudy is playing dumb here. We're assuming at this time that maybe Rudy is playing dumb in front of Chris, right? just because Rudy knows that Chris is right there. Maybe doesn't want to touch on it, because we do get this whole interaction from interacting with Rudy in the church, just after the choir scene, if I'm recalling correctly. But yeah, so we assumed from all of this that Carol and Asgore were working together to find out what happened with December Holiday, right? But from what it seems like, in these new chapters, is that maybe Asgore doesn't know, because we learned also from the scene when we're in Noelle's house that Carol is obviously in cahoots with Chris. When Carol is talking to Chris, she says to them, as you know, you are always welcome here, and the U is in red text, clearly showing that Carol knows who the player is, and also Carol is very welcoming to Chris there too. And it seems like that Carol has a truce with Chris, while she is also working with Asgore, but for some reason she's leaving Asgore in the dark, no pun intended, about all of this stuff, right? Okay, and then the next bit of information I have here about stuff that's going on is that we learned in chapter 5 that Ralsei definitely knows more than he was leading on, right? We already knew that, we already sort of had an idea that Ralsei was kind of in on the whole lying to Susie thing and stuff like that. But I feel like this scene between Ralsei and Flowery, specifically, this is if you're watching the scene, if you watch Ralsei pray, if you sit and think about Ralsei during chapter 5, then you have this specific interaction that stood out to me. When Flowery says, so they're talking, and Flowery says, "Oh, are we so bad for having a dark fountain?" Ralsei says, "Obviously." Then Flowery says, "Really? So that would mean the one who made this dark fountain is a bad person too." And then Ralsei avoids the question, right? So this to me is sort of letting know, like, this to me lets us know that Ralsei is sort of in on this conspiracy too. But it also begs the question of, well, how aware is Carol of Ralsei? How aware is Carol about Ralsei's existence and this whole thing? Does Carol know that? It seems obvious that Carol should know that Chris is going into the Dark Worlds with both Susie and Ralsei, but I feel like this was just a lot of really good insight on sort of what's going on, right? And then the one thing that I think we got from chapter 5, and this is specifically taken from the Weird Route. The one thing I got from chapter 5, obviously we sort of got some evidence that Rudy Night might possibly be a thing, but I think the more you think about it, the more it sort of falls apart. But at the very least, I think Rudy is more involved in this than we first assumed, right? Because a lot of people are talking about Rudy falling down in chapter 5 in the normal route. This screenshot is specifically taken from the Weird Route, an aborted Weird Route, I should say. But I think the whole Carol calling Noelle's mom, Carol calling Noelle, I think that whole thing was almost part of the plan. Because for one, it's Carol doing the calling, right? If we think back to when Chris is getting those calls in Noelle's house, we're assuming that it's Carol at the time. But a lot of people said that there might have been two voices, and I think it's possible. Some people said it might be the night. I don't necessarily think that, but I think maybe it could be Carol and Rudy talking to Chris through the phone in chapter 4 when we see Chris in the kitchen when the soul is out of Chris's body. And I think the falling down thing, I believe it's a red herring. I believe it's sort of a trick almost. Or at the very least, I think we're not supposed to know whether he's fallen down in the sense of a monster falling down, meaning that they're near death, or if he fell down off of the ladder, right, and got injured. I feel like it's one of those things where it's intentionally supposed to be vague. We're not supposed to know the extent of what has happened to Rudy just yet. But either way, I think that since in the weird route, Rudy has not fallen off, and he's simply just really exhausted from putting up the lights and stuff like that. I think that alludes to the fact that Carol calling Noelle was planned if things were all going accordingly, right? And also, I think, to me, the whole conspiracy going on is with Ralsei's involvement and stuff like that. To me, the whole conspiracy of them lying to Susie is because Susie getting together with Noelle is technically bad for the prophecy, right? It technically lets the prophecy happen. So I think that Chris and Ralsei and Carol and Rudy are all trying to stop. I think they're all trying to stop Susie from getting together with Noelle. And some other evidence about that is some other evidence I can sort of think of is just how Chris, whenever we choose options that put the two of them together, there's usually some aversion to that from Chris, which we could attribute to Chris having a crush on Susie. But while that might be part of it, also part of it is, I think a potential motive for all of the group chat, as the fandom calls it, is to put a stop to the prophecy because it doesn't work in their interest in getting December back. So again, I think Rudy is involved in this somehow. I don't think he's necessarily the knight, but again, this dialogue specifically is of interest to me when he says holidays are always full of surprises, and then when Susie asks what kind of surprises, he says depends on which holiday, which could mean several different things, right? And I think we're obviously not really supposed to know what that means. So again, what's going on with all of this stuff? That's not supposed to be there yet. How do I go back? Oh, there we go. I was supposed to have these swapped around. So here is the web of lies that I think is going on right now with the triple truths, right? So Asgore is working with Carol under the assumption that Chris doesn't know, and which obviously Chris does know. And Chris is working together with Carol and Rudy and the Knight, and leaving Asgore in the dark out of that. And also, Ralsei's involved in there too. I'm sorry. I tried my best to put this together in a way that was concise and made sense here, but I guess I'll just read this out. So Carol is working with Asgore, but has other motives with Chris. And then here in asterisks, because we don't technically know how involved Rudy is. Rudy is working with Chris and isn't telling Asgore that he knows about Dark Worlds. Because again, obviously Rudy, we're assuming, I guess I shouldn't say obviously, but we're assuming that Rudy knows about Asgore's antics, trying to figure out this whole thing, trying to figure out about December's disappearance. We obviously know, we can assume that Rudy knows about Asgore working with Carol, right? But we don't know if he's involved at all, and we can assume from some of the events in Chapter 5 that maybe if Rudy isn't kept in the dark about all of this stuff and he knows more than we think he knew before, then we can assume he knows about the Dark Worlds and is keeping that information away from Asgore, right? And the Knight is interesting, depending on who it is, right? So the Knight is obviously working with Chris and Ralsei. Maybe less so Ralsei, because again, if you look to the Chapter 3 fight with the Knight will show no mercy to Susie or Ralsei in the fight, and the only person that pulls back any punches during the Knight fight, the only person that the Knight pulls their punches for is Chris. So we can assume that the bond between Chris and the Knight, whoever it might be, is pretty close, which I think is really good evidence for any of the 3 holidays in question, which is December, Carol, and Rudy. Again, I think December it's pretty strong evidence, but I'm still not fully convinced. But that's not really what we're here to argue about. Anyway, so the Knight is working with Chris and Ralsei. Whether or not it knows about Gaster specifically is context dependent, because this is going to be important later, right? And Asgore is working with Carol, but is left in the dark about Rudy having any information, and is also left in the dark about how much Carol actually knows. And I think that posits something interesting on what Carol and Chris, if they're working together, what their actual motives are throughout this whole thing, right? And then Chris is working with Carol, Rudy, and the Knight. But what I think is implied throughout this whole thing is that throughout this double crossing of Asgore and technically Susie too, I probably should have added Susie in this, but I just, again, I'm not really that good of a theorist. This is all made on just like Google Slides or whatever, but I didn't really script any of this out, as you can pretty obviously tell. But anyway, so with all of this double crossing, because Chris is double crossing Asgore, and Chris is also double crossing Susie, which is pretty obvious, right? But one thing that I think is implied throughout all of this, which I should have found a little more evidence for, is that Chris is lying to everybody about their true motive throughout this whole thing. And I think that even after Chris is already double crossing their dad and also their brand new best friend, I think they are also double crossing Rudy and Carol, the people that they're working with. And I think all of this ties back to whatever is going on with Gaster. Now, there isn't a whole ton of solid evidence for that. I think this is kind of a big jump in logic, but it's just something that I'm positing that I think would just be interesting narratively. And I think there's some foreshadowing that, again, I think there's some subtle foreshadowing that this is the direction that things could be going. Now, anyway, what this slide was supposed to be was showing everybody who is working under Gaster, and for this is the evidence for Chris's like triple truce thing going on, right? Because obviously Chris is working with Carol, Rudy, and the Knight, and Chris is also working with Ralsei and betraying Susie and stuff like that. But I think with the third betrayal, Chris betraying Carol, Rudy, and the Knight, I think this is the potential pool of people. Again, it like the Knight, it's dependent if the Knight is December, right? If the Knight is Rudy or Carol, then the Knight technically wouldn't be working with Gaster. I don't think, because I don't think necessarily that would make sense. I think the only way that the Knight is involved with Gaster is if the Knight is December, which again is just more solid evidence for December being the Knight. But again, I don't really think that's even the most important detail. I think people honestly focus on the identity of the Knight a little too much. And Friend, again, we've never really seen anything from them, but we're just assuming that they have something to do with Gaster and something to do with the Knight, right? But Friend is really not even a character yet. So, and we don't even know if Friend is going to be a character, if that's going to be fully explained what they are. I think it would make sense if it was fully explained, but we don't know where in the narrative, like what's going on with Friend just yet. And I think we're going to figure out in Chapter 6 or Chapter 7. Right, so these two aren't really solid, I don't think, especially after Chapter 5. Before Chapter 5, I think you could have said pretty solidly that the Knight was working with Gaster, especially because they have the holes in their hands. Those are confirmed holes, right? And it wouldn't really make sense for the Knight to have holes in their hands and not be working directly under Gaster, But again, this is all just theory. This is all just stuff I'm positing, right? But then also, one thing that's interesting too is, again, how much does Ralsei know? Because if we go back to this whole string of dialogue, this is pretty heavily implying, if not confirming, I'm going to say it's heavily implying, that Ralsei knows that Chris has been making the fountains, and that Ralsei knows which fountains were made by who, right? I think I've been seeing people saying that potentially Chris is the one who made the Castletown fountain, which I think would make sense because of how much it parallels Chapter 5's Dark World, especially with the intro, with the Field of Hope and Dreams and stuff like that. But it just posits, so if Ralsei knows about Chris's plans more than anybody else, right, we can assume that if Chris is working with Gaster, again, a lot of assumptions to make, that also means, since Ralsei is so closely tied to Chris's own conspiracy going on, that Ralsei is also therefore working with Gaster, or working directly under Gaster. And we can also assume, with all of the Onion Sand shenanigans going on, and all of the shenanigans with, I think, these three, I know these two for sure are both goners. I'm not sure if this sprite right here, if she is a goner. I don't know if that's totally confirmed, but we know there are some goner shenanigans going on. Obviously, this normal NPC goner blocks the way to the lake during, what is it? Is it chapter 3? I think it's chapter 3 that this goner blocks the way to the lake, and they say, wait, no, stop, what are you doing? Something like that. And a lot of people are sort of saying that maybe Onion Sand was, he was killed and then turned into little octopus balls for the festival and stuff like that. And one interesting thing, again, this is something that people have been thinking for a long time, is that, again, Sans is very closely tied to Gaster, and I think specifically in the Weird Route, Sans giving you the breadcrumbs, which, if you don't know, this whole bread thing and the flavor text about tends to leave crumbs wherever it goes. This is a reference to Mother. I think it's Mother 1. It might be Mother 3. I'm not totally sure. I probably should have added that in here, but it's a reference to Mother 3, and there was this thing called the breadcrumbs glitch, which lets you go out of bounds, which, is what we're assuming Noelle and Chris did when they went into the lake, is that they went out of the bounds of the game, right? And Sans is the entire catalyst for this. So at the very least, we can assume that Sans is very closely tied to whatever plans Gaster has going on, and what we're assuming for this specific theory is that Chris is the catalyst for Gaster's plans, which is, and that is Triple Trucies' theory. I'm sorry if this was super all over the place, if I wasn't really well spoken, if there's a lot of confusion and stuff like that. Feel free to add on to this or to disprove this in the comments. If we're gonna have discussion, let's keep it respectful. Specifically when talking about the night, I feel like discussion can get pretty heated, but again, let's try and keep the discussion civil and all of that stuff. This is just something that I particularly thought was interesting narrative-wise, like what's going on, because obviously throughout this whole thing, even in the normal route, throughout Chapter 5, we see plenty of scenes where Chris's plan is sort of falling through the cracks almost, right? We see them trying to tear up the shelter code when Flowery's jar is broken, and Chris is searching through the dirt and is trying to rip up the shelter code. We see that they're stopped, and we see Chris is sort of stumbling in their steps, and I think what it's all leading to is that Chris's big conspiracy is going to be revealed to pretty much everybody, which is including Susie, which is including Asgore, including Carol and Rudy. And that's probably going to happen when the night is revealed, I think that would make the most sense, is that Chris's plan is going, maybe it's not going to be fully said, and it's not going to be fully found out by all of the characters, but I think eventually, not only is Susie going to realize that Chris has been lying to them, I feel like a lot of other people are going to start seeing that too, which is, I think it would be really interesting and also really heartbreaking for the narrative to go in that whole direction, just sort of giving the lesson of not to spin a whole web of lies such as this. Man, can you tell how nervous I was making this? Yeah, again, just be respectful in the comments. I would really love if people could provide more evidence to this theory, making it solid. Probably fill in some of the blanks that I couldn't fill in. And yeah, thanks for watching. See ya.